Hey, this is Daniela Cambone with StansberryInvestor.com, and do we have a treat for you today? He is back with me, Max Keiser, the epitome of everything Bitcoin. He joins me here on StansberryInvestor.com to talk about the debate that everyone's been waiting for. We have it. It will be on our platform on Stansberry Research. Michael Saylor versus Frank Giustra in the Bitcoin versus gold debate, battle of the assets. And here to talk the pre-debate with me analysis, Max, welcome back. Good to see you.
Hi, Danielle. Yeah, it's great to be back with you. And this is going to be an exciting debate. You've got two billionaires, and interesting. Frank Giustra really prompted Michael Saylor on social media into this debate. He was really calling him out. And after a couple of days, Michael Saylor responded. And so now it's all happening over there with you. And I think the audience for this is going to be very big, and they're very excited, Daniela.
I am really excited. And I want to thank you, Max, for coming on for the pre-debate talk with me. And yeah, just to give some backstory, I'm happy you brought this up. This didn't happen overnight. So, Frank brought this to my attention that he wanted to debate Michael over a month ago. And, it wasn't looking like Michael was going to bite. And then, behold, on Good Friday, he sends out a tweet saying, who wants to see this debate, me versus Frank Giustra, the Daniela Cambone as the moderator on Stansberry. And the people responded in a resounding vote. So we got that. I'm thrilled. As you've said, it's gone viral. Everyone's talking about it. Clubhouses are dedicated to it. Max, why do you think the Bitcoin versus gold debate is so polarizing?
It's polarizing. I know from my own personal experience when we kind of switched from following gold in 2021 to starting to cover Bitcoin, it was like Bob Dylan suddenly going electric, right? The traditionalists in the crowd and those folks who are into gold thought it was an outrage and a betrayal. And so there's a lot of that in this debate. People have a huge affinity for gold. It's certainly got a long track record. Frank Giustra does a good job in talking about the track record of gold, that he says it's universality, which is very appealing. It's accepted all over the world. And I think he wants to enter this debate almost, as he says, I'm willing to switch camps. I'm willing to go long Bitcoin, convince me. Tell me why I should go long Bitcoin. So he's really waving the red flag to the ultimate Bitcoin bull, Michael Saylor.
And I'm happy you say that because Frank is really, coming with an open mind, and I'm sure Michael Saylor is as well. But more, Frank has said, like, look, it's not that I'm anti-crypto. Of course, I stand firm on the gold camp. Open my mind more. Let me see what you guys are seeing. So let's talk about some of the punches that we could expect from Saylor and Giustra. I know I said at the start, we think Max Keiser, we think Bitcoin, okay? But I know from past conversations, and people might not know this, you have also embraced gold and silver. True?
Yeah, Michael Saylor, by the way, calls me the high priest of Bitcoin. So you can take that for what it's worth.
Yes, you are the high priest of Bitcoin.
But, as far as, I think, there's two parts to this. There's the actual factual components of this debate. Then there's tactics. And I think tactically, what I'm looking for is Michael Saylor, I think, was going to play a bit of a rope-a-dope tactic on this. He's going to let Frank Giustra kind of punch himself out initially, and then come back later with some more defining arguments that will kind of, I think, put Frank on the defensive. A couple of things that Frank said leading up to this debate that I find curious. He said, quote, I need to have Michael Saylor clarify some things he has said, alluding to what he believes that Saylor is kind of hiding something. He's not really fully disclosing everything that he should be. And Frank is suggesting that Michael's gone on mostly friendly shows. He hasn't had real questioning from a real critic yet. So he's positioning himself as somebody who has a smoking gun almost. And so that's interesting, Daniela. I'm wondering if he does have a smoking gun, if there are some glaring holes in the Michael Saylor pitch for Bitcoin that we're not aware of, but maybe Frank's coming into this thing with a surprise tactic, a surprise weapon. Daniela, your thoughts on that?
I'm not going to reveal anything, but I know that both gentlemen have been doing intense research. I've been speaking with both of them daily since this has been announced. They take this really seriously. And at the end of the day, Max, honestly, they just want to have a civil discussion. They don't want people talking over each other, and they just want to educate the audience as to, the statements that Frank's referring to. I don't know what he has dug up, but I think he's looking more so for clarification and for, the arguments that Saylor has made against gold, that I think Frank thinks are unfair, and he'd like some clarification on. Again, I can't speak for Frank, but from my understanding, that's where it's coming from. But I want to get from you some insider, right? So if you were Michael Saylor, right, what points would you be honing in on? What's the greatest attack on gold? And then I'll ask you the flip side.
Well, I think with gold, the greatest attack, as Saylor would point out time and time again, is that it's not technology. And we live in a century that's now being completely dominated by technology. And what made Bitcoin great was all of the technology that we've seen for decades developing in the United States finally caught up to money. So money was the last industry, the last entity in the economy that hadn't been completely transformed by software, by technology. It has impacted every other industry in the world. Most companies, and at the end of the day, are software companies. We see this in the auto industry where they can't deliver cars now because they're out of microchips, right? So that's software, that's computer technology. It finally caught up to money itself in 2009 with Bitcoin, and now it's simply taken off from there. Frank, I know, has said that, well, Bitcoin's only 12 years old and we don't have enough of a track record, but that's a bit of a misnomer because Bitcoin builds on 25 years of technology development in the space. The so-called cypherpunks have been working on this for 25 years. Even Henry Ford, speaking of the car industry, talked about having an electric money as electricity as money. And he made those comments, 100 years ago. So this is not really as new as some think it is. It's the culmination of many decades of work. And then it finally took off in 2009. And like any network technology, it has the potential to go exponential. And that's we're at now, that hockey stick moment where ubiquity kicks in. So I think that Michael Saylor will drive home the point that this is technology, and how technology is the centerpiece of the global economy, and how technology is now transforming money itself and does a better job than gold in areas like portability, in sending money or sending value on the internet. Obviously, Bitcoin would be better than gold for that purpose. The transaction costs actually in Bitcoin are incredibly cheaper than gold in moving size. If you use move $1 billion worth of gold, Daniela, it's going to cost you at a minimum $30,000-$40,000 to make a move like that from one bank to another. We've seen billion-dollar moves in Bitcoin routinely now costing $5. So that's an incredible cost advantage. So the technology aspect to it, I think, is really going to be a tough nut for Frank to overcome, because it's such an obvious transformative reality that I think that's going to be a tough nut to crack, as I've said.
Now, I'm going to ask you, Max, the high priest of Bitcoin, to find it in the depths of your soul. What would be the greatest punch in favor of Frank against Bitcoin?
The greatest outcome for Frank in this debate is going to be a draw. I don't think he has any hope of winning this debate. I think his greatest hope, like Rocky in the original movie, he's going to be fighting to a draw. And that will be seen as a victory to the gold crowd, that we didn't get beaten, but we still remained with our faith in gold intact to some degree. I think the one of the outcomes that we'll see is an on-air conversion of Frank to a Bitcoiner in real time. I think he's really hankering to become a Bitcoiner. He's currently a no coiner. He keeps saying he wants to own it. He wants to buy it.
If I want to protect my wealth, if that's my primary concern, buy gold. If I want to make money and I don't want to speculate, go ahead, buy Bitcoin. And I'm trying to bring myself to do it. I haven't done it yet. I know it's going higher. It might go down a bit more, but it's going to go higher. And I still can't bring myself to do it.
I think to get a high profile guy like Michael Saylor to sell him on Bitcoin in real time on your show gives him entree into the Bitcoin community in a very splashy way. He immediately becomes very well known as the guy that Michael Saylor converted live on your show. And as a money manager and a guy who's very successful, as he keeps pointing out, he cannot ignore the price. He cannot ignore the action. He's underperforming against Bitcoin spectacularly now on the 3, 4, 5 year time span, and that can't go on for very long. And you can still able to claim that you are a superior money manager, Daniela.
Yeah, but and I cannot speak for Frank, but he, I would suspect would hone in on when you're talking about the price. Yes, Bitcoin, beats gold, but the issue of volatility and also the issue of regulation will come up.
Yeah, those are two issues that will definitely come up, volatility and regulation. On the volatility issue, when you have an asset that's emerging to compete with gold and it's compounding at 200% a year for more than 10 years, that's the volatility. I'll take that volatility every single day. You can't have an asset move up in the millions of percentage points without volatility. And also with Bitcoin, remember something, this is very important. I'll speak as a Bitcoiner. With fiat money, which we also have to include in this debate to some degree, with fiat money, you've got no volatility, but you're guaranteed to lose purchasing power. That's a guarantee. With Bitcoin, you have some volatility, but you're guaranteed to increase your purchasing power. So what would you rather have? Some volatility and increased purchasing power, or no volatility and a guaranteed loss of purchasing power? With gold, as Paul Tudor Jones has said, he owns gold, he owns Bitcoin, but he considers Bitcoin to be the fastest horse in the race because it's competing with gold as a store of value. One of the things that Frank has said recently that I would think is a little off the mark, he says there's not really any institutional adoption, but that's not true. We're seeing institutions all over the world, insurance companies, endowments, hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds, everything up to the level of the central banks have been nibbling or outright buying Bitcoin. So we do have institutional adoption. We've got Fidelity, BlackRock, the hugest money managers in the world now buying Bitcoin or about to offer Bitcoin ETFs. So this is the institutional adoption is coming, and it is a global asset like gold. It is available universally, and it's being picked up in those countries that are being victimized by the U.S. dollar and the sanctions that come with the U.S. dollar. Those and the hyperinflation that we see in a lot of these countries, they are just rushing into Bitcoin, and it's a lifesaver. So on that front, I think he's a little behind the curve. There is a lot of institutions. On the regulatory front, we're getting comments out of Washington all the time where there's a flip. They're saying, actually, we're less concerned about regulating and we're more concerned about being left behind as these other countries start buying Bitcoin and mining Bitcoin. So America is about to enter a moment like the Sputnik moment where we entered the space race. America's got to enter the Bitcoin race because these other countries that are hoarding Bitcoin and mining Bitcoin are set to have the hardest currency in the world as their reserve currency, and America could be left behind, number one. Number two, it's one thing to pass regulations, but it's quite something different to enforce the regulation. What we've seen in countries that have already tried to pass regulations or have passed anti-Bitcoin regulations is that they have found it impossible to enforce the regulations. And that makes sense because it's encrypted. There's no way to crack the encryption. It's completely distributed. It's repeated on thousands of nodes globally. And there's nothing you can do to regulate Bitcoin.
Are you hearing that out of China?
China hasn't stopped Bitcoin at all. Or India, they've banned Bitcoin many times, but usage goes up. Typically in a country that bans Bitcoin, the usage goes up. And so it's not really, we have not seen any ability of any regulatory authority to stop Bitcoin. They've only been able to highlight the need for Bitcoin and show that adoption rates are going up. You also have the issue of geopolitical or geographic arbitrage, where if one country is going to try to clamp down on Bitcoin in a harsh way, then the industry moves to another country that then they're in a position to have a dominant position in a Bitcoin world. Particularly now the Coinbase is going public. That's $100 to $150 billion entity. That'll be an IPO. It's going to create a lot of new insta-billionaires. They've got huge lobbying in Washington. The forces of the Bitcoin folks. Peter Thiel's comments recently about regulatory environment and Bitcoin. He seemed to suggest that there would be heightened Bitcoin. He mentioned China as being, to your point. But if you read the entire text, Daniela, what you find is that what Peter Thiel is signaling to the American government is that they need to get in the game here, or they're going to cede the Bitcoin's high ground to China, which might happen if the U.S. continues to twiddle its thumbs and doesn't get into the Bitcoin race, as they should, just like they did in the space race.
All fascinating thoughts, Max. As you were speaking, I guess I was wondering, does there come a point where you miss the boat on Bitcoin, like a price where it's just moved, and it's too late for other investors? How important is it to get on board now?
It's important to stack sats, as they say, accumulate Satoshis. Satoshi is 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin. And you can still buy close 17 or 1800 Satoshis per dollar, I believe is the current rate. And it's important to continue to accumulate Bitcoin, because the price really at this point at $1 trillion or $1.2 trillion market cap, it still's got room to 10x from here to catch up to gold. And then I think it's also going to go after the global bond market, because the bond market is really topped out. The interest rate's at 0%, and you've got the bond market in American hasn't been this high. If you look at how interest rates have traded, hasn't been this high in over 200 years. The bubble in bonds has been forming for 200 years. The bubble in the English bonds, the gilts, has been forming for 300 years. You haven't seen interest rates this low. That's the biggest bubble in the world by far. And when that bubble starts to collapse, that's 200 trillion in capital that's available now. And some of that is going to go into Bitcoin. So if gold, it catches up to gold at a 10 trillion market cap, and then you add this bond collapse component, now you've got a 20, 30, 40 trillion dollar market cap. So you still have 30x, 40x from here potentially. This is going to look cheap. I've been buying it since it's $1, and every single day for the last 10 years, people have told me it's too high. All the way going back, even Peter Schiff told me it was too high to buy when it was $1. And clearly he's been wrong.
Which is one attribute that gold has that Bitcoin doesn't?
The one attribute that gold has that Bitcoin doesn't at the moment is fungibility. Gold is fungible to an extent that Bitcoin is not. Fungibility meaning you can melt down your gold and recast it as in some other different form, and it maintains its integrity as gold, and it's completely anonymous. It's completely fungible. Bitcoin, because it is digital, because it's a public blockchain, because it's transparent, you don't have the same fungibility. And that's in fact why criminal use of Bitcoin has gone down. So it was estimated recently that criminal cases around the world, 1.5% is used Bitcoin. And that number in the last 6 to 9 months has gone down to under 1%. Because actually using Bitcoin for crime is a terrible idea, because you can go right to the publicly accessible blockchain. It's completely transparent, and they track down the criminals. So the criminals are not using Bitcoin; they're using cash, or they might be using gold. It's much more fungible. Now, having said that, the fungibility issue with Bitcoin, with improvements that are coming, will be improved. These are things that are coming that will be improved. But I would say that is one aspect to gold that is superior in that respect, that one aspect.
I appreciate and thank you for answering that question. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm honored to be moderating this debate. I guess final thoughts, Max. One thing you really want to happen during this debate, don't say a knockout punch.
No, I think, well, a couple of things. Number one, Frank's going to manage to sell Michael Saylor on some of his new spicy olive oil, which he's working on. He's got a limited run of 1,000 bottles. I'm interested in a bottle of Frank's.
It's the best olive oil on the planet.
I want some of that stuff. I think what's going to happen is, what you're saying here, and this is news to me, that you're in contact with these guys on a daily basis. So I think they're really taking this seriously.
They are.
As the quintessential gold versus Bitcoin debate. And I think they really want to dig into these issues. And there's going to be a lot of knowledge transfer going both ways. I think mostly going from Michael Saylor to Frank, just because Frank is pretty well established in that gold industry, and this is kind of a new thing for him. But I think by the end of this debate, I think really, Frank, it's going to be a draw. And that's the way you're going to walk away from this, is like, let's agree that this is a draw. And then we're going to find, and then the next day, Frank's going to say, oh, I just put 1% of my portfolio into Bitcoin.
I don't know how it's going to play out, but I can tell you this. I've been in hibernation researching and preparing for this. So if I go dark for a few days, you know where to find me. Thanks for dressing up for the occasion, Max. I love having you on the show. Thank you.
Well, congratulations for you being the chosen venue for this. I mean, you're clearly the leader in financial news without exception, except for me and Stacy, of course.
Of course. And I bow down to you guys. You guys are heroes of mine. You're always welcome on my show here at StansberryInvestor.com. Thank you, Max Keiser. I'm super excited. Can you tell?
Yeah, I'm excited. This is the event of the fight of the century. Thanks, right. Daniela.
Let's get it done. And we're the place to watch it. Stansberry Research. We won. We won the platform. I'm honored. Frank Giustra versus Michael Saylor in a gold versus Bitcoin smackdown, battle of the assets. It will air on April 21st, but you have to register for it. It's free at DanielaCambone.com. Don't miss out. That's it for me. I'm Daniela Cambone.